The crystalline spires of the Galactic Council headquarters stretched impossibly high into the purple-tinted atmosphere of Nexus Prime, their surfaces pulsing with the collective heartbeats of 10,000 different species. Ambassador Kate Morrison stood at the entrance to the Grand Assembly Hall, her simple black diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the flowing robes, ceremonial armor, and energy fields that surrounded her. The massive doors ahead were carved from a single piece of living crystal, their surfaces showing glimpses of the chamber beyond where representatives from across the galaxy waited in judgment. Kate checked her chronometer one final time. 3 years of preparation had led to this moment. 3 years of secrets that could either save the galaxy or destroy any hope of peaceful coexistence. Final security scan complete, announced the guard, a towering Vorthak whose 6 arms moved with mechanical precision as it operated the scanning equipment. You may proceed, human. The word human carried an unmistakable tone of disdain. Kate had grown accustomed to it during the long journey to Nexus Prime, but it still stung. To most of the galaxy, humanity was little more than an upstart species that had barely mastered faster-than-light travel. What they didn't know was that Earth's first contact with alien technology had occurred under very different circumstances than anyone suspected. The doors opened with a sound like distant thunder, revealing the Grand Assembly Hall in all its terrifying majesty. The chamber was vast beyond comprehension, its walls curving upward into darkness while thousands of delegate platforms floated at various heights, each one perfectly positioned to provide an unobstructed view of the central speaking area. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed across the walls, creating a hypnotic display that seemed to respond to the collective emotions of the assembled representatives. Kate walked forward onto the speaking platform, her footsteps echoing in the sudden silence that had fallen over the chamber. Around her, creatures of every conceivable form watched with interest, suspicion, and barely concealed hostility. The Meridian Collective's crystalline representatives chimed softly, in what she recognized as their equivalent of whispered conversation. The gas giant dwellers of the Typhon system rippled their energy fields in complex patterns of communication, and everywhere the translation matrices hummed as thousands of different languages were processed and converted into understandable concepts. At the highest point of the chamber, on a platform that seemed to float without any visible support, sat the High Chancellor. The ancient being was one of the few remaining members of the precursor species, its elongated form wrapped in robes that seemed to be made of compressed starlight. When it spoke, the words bypassed the translation matrices entirely, appearing directly in the minds of every being present. Representative Morrison of Earth, the High Chancellor's mental voice carried the weight of eons. You stand before this assembly under the most serious of circumstances. Your species has been accused of violations that threaten the very foundation of galactic peace. Kate remained perfectly still, her face showing none of the tension she felt. Behind her, she could sense the arrival of her small support team, Dr. James Foster, Earth's foremost xenobiologist, Commander Rachel Torres representing Terra Defense Forces, and David Chen, their diplomatic attaché. Each of them carried a piece of the puzzle that had brought them to this moment. The charges are grave, continued the High Chancellor. Unauthorized expansion into restricted sectors, development of prohibited technologies, and most concerning of all, interference with protected civilizations. A ripple of agreement passed through the assembly. The hegemony representatives, massive insectoid beings whose homeworld commanded vast trade networks, clicked their mandibles in a rhythm that conveyed approval. The Peaceful Lotus Federation dimmed their natural luminescence, and what Kate had learned was their expression of deep concern. How does humanity respond to these accusations? The High Chancellor asked. Kate took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would determine not just Earth's fate, but potentially the survival of every species in the chamber. She had practiced this moment countless times, but standing here under the collective gaze of galactic civilization made everything feel surreal. Honored Chancellor, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space thanks to the chamber's acoustic enhancement systems. Before we address these charges, I must ask this assembly a question that goes to the heart of why we are here today. The chamber stirred with surprised murmurs. No one addressed the High Chancellor with questions. The audacity of the human's words sent shocked vibrations through multiple species' communication methods. Kate continued, undeterred by the reaction her words had caused. When did this council first become aware of the Void Stalkers? The effect was immediate and dramatic. The gentle background hum of translation matrices faltered as multiple species' languages failed to process the term. The Meridian Collective's crystalline forms went completely silent, their usual musical tones replaced by an ominous stillness. Even the High Chancellor's ancient composure seemed to waver slightly. "There is no such classification in our databases," the Chancellor replied, but Kate noticed the slight hesitation that preceded the words. "With respect, Chancellor, that's exactly the problem," Kate said, reaching into her diplomatic case to withdraw a small, innocuous-looking data crystal. "Because they've been hunting you for over 50 years, and until 3 days ago, you had no idea they existed." The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates demanded explanations in dozens of languages while security drones moved into defensive positions around the perimeter. Several species representatives began backing toward the exits, their natural flight responses triggered by the implications of Kate's words. But Kate wasn't finished. She held up the data crystal and somehow, despite the cacophony surrounding her, her voice cut through the noise with crystalline clarity. "This crystal contains evidence of 47 separate first contact scenarios between Voidstalker forces and galactic civilizations. In every case, the contacted species disappeared within 6 months. No distress signals, no wreckage, no survivors. Just empty worlds where thriving societies once existed." The High Chancellor's mental voice, when it came, carried a tremor that Kate had not heard before. "How does humanity possess such information?" Kate's expression remained perfectly calm as she delivered the words that would change everything. "Because we're the only species that survived their first contact protocol." The silence that followed was absolute. In that moment, every being in the chamber understood that they weren't witnessing a trial for humanity's alleged crimes. They were witnessing humanity's first attempt to save a galaxy that had no idea it was already under attack. Kate activated the data crystal, and holographic displays began to materialize around the speaking platform. Star charts showed the locations of dead worlds. Timeline analyses revealed the systematic nature of the disappearances, and most chilling of all, trajectory projections that pointed directly toward the galaxy's core worlds. "The unauthorized expansion you detected," Kate continued, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was revealing, "was us tracking their scout ships. The prohibited technologies we developed were reverse-engineered from their weapons after we captured one of their vessels. And the protected civilizations we allegedly interfered with? We evacuated them 3 steps ahead of Voidstalker harvesting fleets." Commander Torres stepped forward, her military bearing evident even in the alien environment. "Earth encountered the Voidstalkers 18 months after we achieved faster-than-light capability. They expected us to follow the same pattern as every other species they'd contacted: surrender, capitulation, and eventual harvesting. But humans are remarkably difficult to harvest," Dr. Foster added, his scientific curiosity evident even in the gravity of the moment. "We adapted. We learned. And we fought back." Kate watched as the implications began to sink in among the assembled delegates. The Meridian Collective's representatives had begun producing harmonic frequencies that she recognized as their distress calls. The Typhon energy beings were fluctuating wildly, their normal stable patterns disrupted by what they were learning. "The question before this assembly," Kate said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty, "is no longer whether humanity violated galactic law. The question is whether you're prepared to learn why we violated it, and what we discovered in the process." She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the thousands of representatives who had come here expecting to judge humanity's crimes. "Because in approximately 72 hours, the Voidstalkers are going to discover that their systematic exploration of this galaxy has been compromised, and when they do, they're going to accelerate their timeline for the final harvest." The High Chancellor's ancient form seemed to diminish slightly as the full scope of the situation became clear. "What are you proposing, Ambassador Morrison?" Kate's response carried the quiet confidence of someone who had spent 3 years preparing for this exact moment. "We're proposing to teach you how to fight back. But first, you need to understand exactly what you're fighting." She activated another section of the holographic display, and suddenly the chamber was filled with images that defied CE. The holographic display expanded until it filled the entire center of the Grand Assembly Hall, showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy with pulsing red indicators scattered across multiple spiral arms. Each red dot represented something that made the assembled delegates recoil in horror, as they began to understand the true scope of what humanity had discovered. Ambassador Kate Morrison stood perfectly still as chaos erupted around her. The Meridian Collective's crystalline representatives were producing discordant harmonic frequencies that their translation matrices couldn't properly convert. The peaceful Lotus Federation had begun flickering between different states of luminescence in what she recognized as their species' equivalent of panic. Even the stoic Vorthak guards had shifted from their ceremonial positions to active combat stances, their six arms moving to weapon configurations. High Chancellor Mordak's ancient mental voice cut through the cacophony like a blade. Silence. The single word carried such authority that every being in the chamber immediately stopped moving. Ambassador Morrison, you will explain these indicators immediately. Kate gestured to the holographic display, her movements precise and deliberate. Each red marker represents a Void Stalker collection point. These are locations where they've been systematically harvesting biological and technological resources from civilizations that your council believes simply went dark due to natural causes. Dr. James Foster stepped forward, his scientific demeanor providing a stark contrast to the growing panic in the chamber. Over the past 18 months, we've conducted covert reconnaissance missions to 43 of these locations. What we found challenges every assumption the galaxy has made about the nature of extinction events. The display zoomed in on a system that several delegates immediately recognized. The hegemony representative, a massive insectoid being called Prime Gatherer Zixtal, let out a series of clicking sounds that the translation matrix rendered as extreme distress. That is the Kepler 442 system, Zixtal announced, her multiple vocal chambers creating a harmony of concern. The Brightwind civilization was one of our most important trading partners. They reported equipment failures and asked for assistance 15 months ago. When our aid fleet arrived, they found empty cities and no signs of struggle. Because there was no struggle, Commander Rachel Torres said grimly, the Void Stalkers don't invade worlds in the traditional sense. They seduce them. Kate activated another section of the display, showing detailed recordings that made several species representatives immediately avert their optical sensors. The images showed beautiful, peaceful cities where the inhabitants were going about their daily lives normally. Except for one crucial detail, they were all moving in perfect synchronization, as if responding to some unheard rhythm. This footage was taken 6 hours before the Brightwind civilization's final transmission, Dr. Foster explained. The Void Stalkers don't destroy societies. They integrate them. Every citizen becomes part of a collective consciousness that exists to serve the Stalker's ultimate purpose. Which is what exactly? Demanded Chancellor Mordak, his mental voice carrying undertones of something that might have been fear. Kate's expression grew even more serious as she activated the next section of her presentation. Galactic preparation for something they call the Great Convergence. Based on our analysis of captured communications, they're not just harvesting random civilizations. They're systematically collecting specific types of biological, technological, and intellectual resources. The holographic display shifted to show a complex matrix that categorized different species by their capabilities. The assembled delegates watched in growing horror as they realized their own civilizations were listed with detailed analyses of their potential contributions to whatever the Void Stalkers were building. The Meridian Collective is classified as harmonic manipulation specialists, Kate read from the display. The Typhon energy beings are listed as dimensional bridge candidates. The hegemony is categorized as biomechanical integration optimal. Prime Gatherer. Zixtal's mandibles clicked rapidly. You're suggesting we're all being cataloged for specific purposes? Not suggesting, Commander Torres corrected. Confirming. We've intercepted enough of their communications to understand that the Great Convergence is some kind of massive construction project that requires the combined capabilities of hundreds of different species. Dr. Foster manipulated the display to show architectural blueprints that defied conventional understanding of engineering. These are fragments of construction plans we've recovered from Void Stalker vessels. We believe they're building something that spans multiple dimensions, but we haven't been able to determine its ultimate purpose. The High Chancellor's ancient form seemed to diminish as the implications became clear. How many civilizations have they already collected? Kate's response sent a wave of shock through the chamber. Based on our analysis, approximately 1,200 species over the past 2 centuries. The process has been accelerating significantly in the last 50 years. 1,200, whispered the representative from the Lotus Federation, her natural luminescence flickering to almost nothing. But our historical records show only minor population decline and natural extinction events. Because that's what they wanted you to believe, Kate said simply. The Void Stalkers are masters of information control. Every time they harvest a civilization, they ensure that the galactic community receives plausible explanations for the disappearance. Solar flares, asteroid impacts, plague outbreaks, civil wars that leave no survivors, Commander Torres added. They've been manipulating galactic information networks for decades, ensuring that no pattern becomes visible to any single species or organization. The chamber erupted in demands for proof, but Kate was already ahead of them. The holographic display shifted to show communication intercepts, data trail analyses, and most damning of all, evidence of altered historical records in the galactic databases. This is a communication from the Void Stalker command hierarchy, intercepted 3 months ago, Kate announced as alien text appeared in the display, automatically translated by humanity's captured translation technology. It discusses the acceleration of collection activities in preparation for what they term Phase 7 implementation. Chancellor Mordak's mental voice carried a tremor that had not been present before. What is Phase 7? Kate's answer was delivered with the calm precision of someone who had studied the enemy for years. The simultaneous harvesting of all remaining galactic civilizations. According to their timeline, it begins in 72 hours. The silence that followed was absolute. Every being in the chamber was processing the implications of what they had just learned. The Vorthak guards had moved to full combat readiness. The Meridian Collective had gone completely silent, their crystalline forms reflecting the chamber's lighting in patterns that spoke of deep shock. How does humanity possess this information? Chancellor Mordak finally asked. You claim to have survived first contact, but how did you not only survive but acquire their technology and intelligence? Kate exchanged glances with her team before responding. Because when the Void Stalkers made first contact with Earth, they made a critical error in judgment. They assumed that a species that had just achieved faster-than-light travel would respond to their contact protocol the same way every other species had responded. Dr. Foster stepped forward. The standard Void Stalker first contact protocol involves a demonstration of overwhelming technological superiority, followed by an offer of partnership that is actually a slow integration process. Most species see the demonstration and immediately begin seeking ways to negotiate or surrender. Humans saw the demonstration and immediately began planning how to steal their technology, Commander Torres said with grim satisfaction. Kate activated another section of the display, showing Earth's solar system as it had appeared 18 months ago, when the first Void Stalker scout ship arrived. The images showed a relatively primitive civilization with basic space technology and a small number of orbital installations. This is Earth when they first contacted us, Kate explained. A single world with a population that had just achieved interplanetary travel. By their calculations, we should have been integrated within weeks. The display shifted to show Earth as it appeared now, and the gasps of astonishment from the assembled delegates were audible, even through their various translation methods. The planet was surrounded by defensive installations that seemed to incorporate technology far beyond what any single species should possess. Massive orbital platforms bristled with weapons that defied conventional understanding of physics. This is Earth today, Kate announced. What the Void Stalkers didn't account for was humanity's talent for reverse engineering technology and our cultural concept of total warfare, Commander. Torres' expression was fierce as she continued the explanation. When they demonstrated their technological superiority, we didn't see a superior force to be feared. We saw an enemy that had just shown us exactly what weapons we needed to acquire. The Grand Assembly Hall had transformed from a place of judgment into something resembling a military command center. Representatives who had arrived to condemn humanity were now frantically coordinating with their home fleets, their voices creating a cacophony of urgent communications in dozens of languages. Emergency beacon arrays that hadn't been activated in centuries were blazing to life as each species attempted to contact their military commanders. Ambassador. Kate Morrison watched the chaos with carefully controlled patience. This was exactly what she had expected, But the timing was critical. Every minute spent in confusion was a minute closer to Phase 7 implementation. High Chancellor Mordak's mental voice cut through the noise with the authority of eons. Order will be maintained. The ancient being's command carried such force that every delegate immediately ceased their individual communications and turned their attention back to the central platform. Ambassador Morrison, the Chancellor, continued, "You have presented us with evidence of an existential threat that our most advanced intelligence services failed to detect. You claim to possess countermeasures for an enemy that has successfully harvested 1,200 civilizations. I must ask, why should we believe that humanity has succeeded where so many others have failed?" Kate had been waiting for this question. She gestured to Commander Torres, who stepped forward with a small device that seemed remarkably unremarkable compared to the advanced technology surrounding them. "Because, Chancellor," Kate replied, "we can prove it." Commander Torres activated the device, and suddenly the chamber's lighting changed. The bioluminescent patterns that had been pulsing along the walls flickered and dimmed, replaced by a harsh, clinical white light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "What you're experiencing now," Torres announced, "is the activation of a localized Voidstalker consciousness suppression field. If any being in this chamber were under Voidstalker influence, they would be temporarily disconnected from their collective consciousness." The effect on the assembled delegates was immediate and dramatic. Several representatives who had been maintaining complex energy field configurations suddenly found their patterns destabilizing. The Meridian Collective's harmonic frequencies became discordant, and most telling of all, 3 delegates from different species suddenly collapsed as if their strings had been cut. Isolation scanners indicate 3 confirmed Voidstalker infiltration units, Dr. Foster reported matter-of-factly, as if announcing the weather. "They appear to have been integrated into the galactic political structure for an estimated 18 to 24 months. The chamber erupted in panic. Security forces moved toward the collapsed delegates while others backed away in horror. The realization that the Voidstalkers had already infiltrated the highest levels of galactic government sent shockwaves through every species present." Kate raised her voice above the chaos. "This is why humanity has survived when others have failed. We don't just fight the enemy we can see. We hunt the enemy that's already among us." Chancellor Mordak's mental voice carried a tremor that spoke of profound shock. "How did you detect them when our most advanced sensors showed nothing?" "Because we've learned to think like them," Kate answered. "Every species that has encountered the Voidstalkers has made the same mistake. You've tried to fight them using your existing understanding of warfare, diplomacy, and technology. We've learned to fight them using their own methods." Commander Torres deactivated the suppression field, and the chamber's normal lighting returned. The 3 collapsed delegates remained unconscious, their true nature revealed. These infiltration units were feeding real-time intelligence about galactic military capabilities directly to the Voidstalker command hierarchy. They knew exactly when to begin Phase 7 because they had perfect intelligence about your defenses. Dr. Foster stepped forward with a handheld scanner that was clearly of alien origin. "This device is reverse-engineered from captured Voidstalker technology. It can detect their consciousness integration patterns from a distance of several kilometers. We've been using it to identify infiltrators throughout galactic civilization for the past 6 months. The implications hit the assembled delegates like a physical force. The Lotus Federation representative, her luminescence now flickering with what Kate recognized as fear, spoke for the first time since the revelation had begun. "How many infiltrators have you found?" Kate's answer sent another wave of shock through the chamber. "Approximately 800 confirmed infiltration units distributed throughout government, military, and research positions across 47 different species. The Voidstalkers haven't just been cataloging your capabilities, they've been directing your development for decades." Prime Gatherer Zixtal's mandibles clicked in rapid succession as she processed this information. "You're claiming that our technological development has been influenced by enemy agents?" "Not influenced," Kate corrected. "Guided. The Voidstalkers don't just harvest civilizations randomly. They've been carefully steering galactic development to ensure that each species develops the specific capabilities they need for the Great Convergence." The holographic display activated again, showing a complex web of technological development timelines across multiple species. The patterns were unmistakable once they were pointed out. Critical breakthroughs in specific fields had occurred simultaneously across different civilizations, despite those civilizations having no contact with each other. The Meridian Collective's breakthrough in harmonic manipulation technology occurred exactly when the Void Stalkers needed resonance specialists, Dr. Foster explained. The Typhon Energy Being's development of dimensional bridging capabilities followed the same timeline as infiltrator reports requesting phase transition experts. Every major technological advancement in the galaxy over the last century has aligned perfectly with Void Stalker requirements. The weight of this revelation was staggering. Every species present was coming to terms with the possibility that their greatest achievements had been orchestrated by an enemy that planned to use those very achievements to enslave them. Chancellor Mordak's mental voice, when it came, carried the exhaustion of an ancient being who had just watched his understanding of reality crumble. How do we know that humanity hasn't been similarly compromised? Kate's response was immediate and unflinching. Because we've been testing ourselves constantly since first contact. Every human in our diplomatic, military, and research divisions undergoes daily consciousness scans. We've developed protocols for detecting infiltration that go far beyond anything the Void Stalkers have encountered before. Commander Torres added, more importantly, we've learned to recognize the signs of infiltration influence in decision-making patterns. The Void Stalkers rely on subtle manipulation rather than direct control. They nudge civilizations toward specific choices rather than forcing compliance, which is how we identified the infiltrators in this chamber, Kate continued. We've been monitoring communication patterns and decision-making processes for months. The three unconscious delegates were exhibiting subtle behavioral modifications that indicated external influence. The High Chancellor's ancient form seemed to straighten slightly, as if drawing on reserves of strength that had been dormant for centuries. What do you propose we do with this knowledge? Kate's answer came with the confidence of someone who had spent months planning for exactly this moment. We propose to teach you how to fight a war that exists on multiple levels simultaneously. We've developed weapons that can disrupt Void Stalker technology, detection methods that can identify infiltrators, and most importantly, strategic approaches that can turn their own advantages against them. The holographic display shifted to show detailed tactical information that made even the most experienced military representatives in the chamber pause in amazement. Fleet movements, technology specifications, and coordination protocols that demonstrated a level of strategic thinking that few species had ever achieved. This is the Terran Anti-Stalker Protocol, Kate announced. It's designed to exploit every weakness we've identified in Void Stalker operations, but implementing it requires precise coordination between every military force in the galaxy. Dr. Foster manipulated the display to show specific technology requirements. We've identified the key components needed to build effective countermeasures. Some of these components can only be manufactured using technology that specific species have developed. Others require resources that are only available in certain systems. But, Commander Torres added with grim emphasis, the most critical component is trust. This plan only works if every species involved is willing to share their most advanced military technology and strategic capabilities with civilizations they've never worked with before. The chamber fell silent as the assembled delegates contemplated the magnitude of what was being asked of them. Sharing advanced technology with potential enemies went against every instinct of species that had evolved in competition with each other. Kate understood their hesitation, but time was running out. I know what we're asking seems impossible, but High Chancellor Mordak's ancient mental voice resonated through the Grand Assembly Hall with the weight of a decision that would reshape galactic civilization. The emergency protocols are hereby activated. All standard diplomatic procedures are suspended. Ambassador Morrison, you have full authorization to implement your protocols. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The chamber's communication arrays blazed to life as emergency signals were transmitted to every corner of the galaxy. Species that had been enemies for centuries suddenly found themselves coordinating military assets with the precision of a single organism. The hegemony's massive war fleets began forming battle groups with Meridian collective harmonic weapon platforms. The peaceful Lotus Federation activated defense systems that most species hadn't known they possessed. Ambassador Kate Morrison stood at the center of it all. coordinating the largest military mobilization in galactic history through technology that seamlessly interfaced with every known communication protocol. Her small team had become the de facto command center for a war that most of the galaxy hadn't even known was coming. Infiltrator sweeps are reporting massive success, Dr. Foster announced as data streamed in from across the galaxy. We've identified and isolated over 3,000 Voidstalker agents in the last 4 hours. Their communication network has been completely severed. Commander Torres was managing fleet coordination with a skill that left veteran military commanders amazed. Terran Defense Forces are reporting full battle readiness. All captured Voidstalker technology has been distributed to allied fleets. Integration is proceeding ahead of schedule. But even as the Galactic Alliance took shape with unprecedented speed, Kate's attention was focused on the countdown display that only her team could see. 57 hours until Phase 7 implementation. It wasn't enough time, unless everything went perfectly. Prime Gatherer Zixtal approached the human command position, her massive insectoid form moving with surprising grace. Ambassador Morrison, our fleet commanders are requesting clarification on the weapon integration protocols. Some of the technology you've provided operates on principles our scientists have never encountered. Kate activated a holographic display that showed detailed technical specifications. The Voidstalkers use what we've termed reality modification technology. Their weapons don't just destroy matter, they alter the fundamental properties of space-time in localized areas. Conventional shields and armor are useless against these weapons. Dr. Foster stepped forward to provide the technical explanation. However, we've discovered that their reality modification effects can be countered using quantum interference patterns generated by harmonic resonance technology. This is why we need Meridian Collective specialists integrated with every battle group. The Meridian representative, a crystalline being called Resonator Prime Veltar, chimed with frequencies that conveyed both excitement and concern. Our harmonic manipulation capabilities were never designed for military applications. We are a peaceful species, which is exactly why the Voidstalkers cataloged you as essential resources, Kate replied. They need your abilities to complete the Great Convergence, but those same abilities can be weaponized to disrupt their technology. Commander Torres activated another section of the display, showing tactical formations that incorporated the unique capabilities of multiple species in ways that had never been attempted. These formations are based on our analysis of Voidstalker weaknesses. Each species' contribution is designed to exploit specific vulnerabilities in their technology and tactics. The Typhon energy being representative, who existed as a controlled plasma field within a containment suit, rippled with patterns that conveyed deep curiosity. You claim to understand our capabilities better than we understand them ourselves? Kate's response was immediate and confident. We've had to. Surviving first contact with the Voidstalkers required us to understand not just human capabilities, but the potential of every species they were cataloging. We've been studying galactic civilization for 18 months, not to conquer it, but to save it. The holographic display shifted to show the current positions of Voidstalker forces throughout the galaxy. The massive fleet that had been waiting at the galaxy's edge was beginning to move, their course calculated to bring them into contact with major civilizations in precisely 55 hours. Phase 7 has begun, Dr. Foster announced grimly. Long-range sensors are detecting movement from all major Voidstalker assets. They're implementing the simultaneous assault protocol. The chamber erupted in urgent activity as military commanders received updated threat assessments. The reality of the situation was becoming impossible to ignore. The largest predatory force in galactic history was moving to attack every major civilization simultaneously. But Kate had been preparing for this moment. All fleet commanders implement Formation Omega. This is not a drill. Repeat, Formation Omega is now in effect. What followed was a display of coordination that defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about large-scale military operations. Hundreds of different species using technology that operated on completely different principles began moving with the precision of a single entity. The Hegemony's biomechanical dreadnoughts formed the backbone of defensive formations, while Meridian harmonic platforms took positions that would allow them to project interference fields across entire star systems. Typhon energy beings positioned themselves at strategic points where their dimensional manipulation abilities could disrupt Voidstalker fleet movements. Human vessels are taking point positions, Commander Torres announced, and the assembled delegates could see why. Earth ships were smaller than most galactic vessels, but they bristled with technology that clearly incorporated principles from multiple civilizations. Weapons that shouldn't exist on the same platform worked in perfect harmony. Chancellor Mordak's mental voice carried a note of amazement. How did humanity achieve such technological integration in only 18 months? Kate's answer revealed something that fundamentally changed how the galaxy viewed human capabilities. Because we don't think in terms of species-specific technology. When we reverse-engineered Voidstalker systems, we immediately began analyzing how those systems could be integrated with existing galactic technology. We've been building hybrid systems that combine the best aspects of every civilization. The holographic display showed detailed schematics of human vessels, and the assembled representatives stared in amazement at weapons platforms that seamlessly combined hegemony biomechanical systems with Meridian harmonic projectors, Typhon energy manipulation arrays, and dozens of other technologies that should have been incompatible. This level of integration should be impossible, the Lotus Federation representative whispered, her luminescence flickering with disbelief. Each species' technology operates on fundamentally different principles. Dr. Foster's explanation was delivered with scientific precision. That's exactly why it works. The Voidstalkers have spent centuries learning to counter species-specific technology. They've never encountered an opponent that uses integrated systems from multiple civilizations simultaneously, Commander Torres added. More importantly, human tactical doctrine has always emphasized adaptability and improvisation. We don't just use weapons as they were designed. We use them in ways their creators never imagined. The first engagement reports began coming in from the outer systems, and the results were unlike anything in galactic military history. Voidstalker scout forces that had easily overcome individual, species defenses were being systematically destroyed by coordinated formations that adapted their tactics in real time. Engagement Report Alpha 7 announced a hegemony fleet, Commander through the communication array. Voidstalker scout group eliminated with 0 allied casualties. Their reality modification weapons were completely neutralized by Meridian harmonic interference. Engagement Report Delta 3 came another report from a mixed Typhon human formation. Enemy collection vessels destroyed before they could begin harvesting operations. Dimensional displacement prevented them from retreating to their main fleet. Kate watched the tactical displays with satisfaction, but she knew this was only the beginning. The Voidstalkers were learning from these engagements, adapting their tactics with each encounter. The real test would come when their main fleet arrived. Status report on infiltrator elimination, she requested. Dr. Foster consulted his captured technology scanners. 97% of identified infiltrators have been isolated or eliminated. Their communication network has been completely severed. The Voidstalkers are operating without intelligence about our preparations. This was perhaps the most critical advantage humanity had provided. By identifying and eliminating the infiltrator network, they had blinded the enemy to the Galactic Alliance's actual capabilities. The Voidstalkers were still operating under the assumption that they would face scattered, unprepared resistance. Prime Gatherer Zixtal was monitoring communications from across the galaxy, her multiple sensory organs processing information at speeds that impressed even the human observers. Fleet coordination isn't easy. The final battle for galactic civilization began not with the thunderous clash of massive fleets, but with absolute silence. The Voidstalker main fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their reality-bending vessels materializing simultaneously across 17 different star systems. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the galaxy held its breath. Ambassador Kate Morrison stood in the Grand Assembly Hall, now transformed into the central command center for the largest military operation in galactic history. Around her, representatives from hundreds of species worked with unprecedented coordination, their differences set aside in the face of an existential threat they had never imagined. Enemy fleet deployment confirmed, Commander Torres announced, her voice cutting through the tense silence. They're implementing exactly the formation patterns our analysis predicted. All fleet groups are in position and ready to execute the counter protocol. High Chancellor Mordak's ancient mental voice carried across the chamber with crystal clarity. Ambassador Morrison, The fate of every civilization in this galaxy now rests on your strategy. Are you certain this will work? Kate's response was immediate and unwavering. Chancellor, 18 months ago, when the first Void Stalker scout ship approached Earth, we had a choice. We could have surrendered like every other species before us. We could have tried to negotiate like the Brightwind civilization. Or we could have done what no other species had apparently thought to do. We could have fought back with everything we had and everything we could steal from them. The holographic displays throughout the chamber showed the tactical situation in real time. Voidstalker vessels were moving toward their targets with the confidence of predators that had never encountered effective resistance. But what they didn't know was that their prey had learned to hunt. Execute Operation Twilight, Kate commanded. What followed was a display of tactical precision that rewrote every assumption about large-scale warfare. The coordinated galactic fleet didn't charge forward to meet the enemy. Instead, they vanished. Hundreds of ships from dozens of different species activated cloaking technology that combined Typhon dimensional manipulation with captured Voidstalker stealth systems. To the enemy sensors, the galaxy's defenders had simply ceased to exist. Dr. Foster was monitoring the enemy response from his captured Voidstalker technology station. Confusion in their command hierarchy is confirmed. They're attempting to establish contact with their infiltrator network, but they're receiving no response because the network no longer exists. The Voidstalkers had built their entire strategy around perfect intelligence. For centuries, they had known exactly where every ship was, what every weapon could do, and how every species would respond to their attacks. Now, for the first time in their recorded history, they were fighting blind. Phase 2 implementation in 3 minutes, Commander Torres announced. All Meridian platforms are charged and ready. Resonator Prime Veltar's crystalline form was vibrating with frequencies that would have been impossible to produce under normal circumstances. The peaceful Meridian Collective had transformed their harmonic manipulation technology into something that could tear holes in reality itself. We are ready, Commander, Veltar chimed, her musical tones now carrying overtones of deadly purpose. Our harmonic projectors are synchronized across 17 star systems. When we activate them simultaneously, the quantum interference will disrupt Voidstalker reality, modification technology across their entire fleet. Kate watched the countdown displays, with the calm focus of someone who had visualized this moment countless times. Everything they had worked for, everything they had sacrificed, came down to the next few minutes. Execute Phase 2. Across the galaxy, Meridian harmonic platforms that had been positioned with mathematical precision began producing frequencies that had never been heard in nature. The effect on the Voidstalker fleet was immediate and catastrophic. Their reality-bending weapons simply stopped working. Vessels that could alter the fundamental properties of space-time suddenly found themselves operating under the same physical laws as everyone else. Direct hit confirmed. Across all enemy formations, reported a hegemony fleet commander. Their technological advantage has been neutralized. They're just ships now. But Kate knew this was only the beginning. The Voidstalkers had conquered 1,200 civilizations not just through superior technology, but through tactical adaptability that had allowed them to overcome any resistance they had encountered. They're adapting faster than projected, Dr. Foster announced as his sensors detected changes in the enemy formation. They're implementing backup protocols and attempting to restore their reality modification capabilities. Expected and planned for, Kate responded calmly. Execute Phase 3. Now the true genius of humanity's strategy became apparent. While the Meridian platforms had neutralized the enemy's technological advantages, human-led formations had been positioning themselves for something that no previous galactic civilization had ever attempted. A coordinated assault using the Voidstalkers' own captured technology against them. Human vessels, equipped with reverse-engineered Voidstalker weapons and crewed by personnel who had spent months learning to think like their enemies, began systematically targeting the command hierarchy that maintained the Voidstalker collective consciousness. Target the prime coordination nodes, Kate ordered. Remember, we're not just trying to destroy their ships. We're trying to break their collective consciousness and free the enslaved civilizations they've absorbed. This was perhaps humanity's most audacious goal. Every Voidstalker vessel contained the processed consciousness of entire civilizations that had been absorbed over centuries. If they could disrupt the control systems correctly, they might be able to free billions of enslaved minds. Commander Torres was coordinating the precision strikes with surgical accuracy. Node 7 is down. Node 12 is down. We're seeing fragmentation in their collective response patterns. The results were visible across the tactical displays. Void stalker formations that had moved with perfect coordination were beginning to fragment. Individual ships were breaking away from their assigned positions, and some were even turning on their own fleet members. Consciousness liberation is working, Dr. Foster reported with barely contained excitement. We're detecting autonomous thought patterns in approximately 30% of their vessels. The freed civilizations are fighting back from within. Prime Gatherer Zixtal's mandibles were clicking in amazement. You're not just defeating them. You're rescuing their previous victims. That was always the plan, Kate said simply. We couldn't save the civilizations they'd already harvested, but we could free them. But even as victory seemed within reach, the Void Stalkers revealed why they had been so successful for so long. The remaining vessels of their fleet, those that hadn't been affected by the consciousness liberation, began implementing a protocol that chilled every observer to their core. They're initiating what appears to be a scorched earth protocol, Commander Torres reported grimly. If they can't harvest the galaxy, they're going to sterilize it completely. The enemy vessels began transforming, their organic hulls reshaping themselves into configurations that were clearly designed for one purpose: the complete annihilation of all life in the galaxy. Chancellor Mordak's mental voice carried a tremor of absolute terror. Can we stop them? Kate's response revealed the final card that humanity had been holding in reserve. We don't need to stop them. We just need to redirect them. Execute final protocol, she commanded. What happened next would be debated by military historians for centuries. Using a combination of captured Void Stalker technology and quantum manipulation techniques that violated several known laws of physics, the human fleet opened what could only be described as a doorway in space-time itself. But this wasn't just any doorway. Through careful analysis of Void Stalker communication, humanity had identified the location of the original Void Stalker homeworld, the source of the collective consciousness that controlled their entire species. We're redirecting their sterilization weapons through a quantum tunnel directly to their point of origin, Dr. Foster explained as the impossible became reality. They wanted to destroy everything in this galaxy. Instead, they're going to destroy themselves. The effect was immediate and final. The Void Stalker sterilization protocol, designed to eliminate all life in the galaxy, was instead channeled through the quantum tunnel directly to their homeworld. The source of their collective consciousness, the central intelligence that had directed the harvest of 1,200 civilizations, was destroyed by its own ultimate weapon. Across the galaxy, every remaining Void Stalker vessel simply stopped. Without their central consciousness to direct them, they became nothing more than empty ships floating in space. The threat that had menaced galactic civilization for centuries had been eliminated in a matter of hours. The Grand Assembly Hall erupted in celebration as reports poured in from across the galaxy. Civilizations that had been on the brink of extinction were safe. Species that had been enemies for centuries had worked together to achieve the impossible, and most importantly, billions of enslaved minds had been freed from Void Stalker control.